This podcast is part of the Zeo to Hero Podcast Network.
AvenuePodcast.net.
Hello, all my beautiful people. It's time once again for another fun episode. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this one. I have a really interesting guest on this week, and that is Terrence Ward. He's a PA announcer, an MC, a filmmaker, and he even announces wrestling for Memphis Wrestling. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy this conversation that I have with him today. We talk about how he got into this career, as well as some stories that he's had along the way. And we even get into talking about some older wrestling and some things that we grew up on. So yeah, this one's got all kinds of great stuff in it. And for those of you who are here just to listen to the Terrence Ward episode, welcome. I hope that you enjoy what you hear, and I hope that you stick around and listen to some of the other great episodes I have here as well. So, if you guys are as excited as I am, then let's get this show on the road.
If you give a dad a podcast. Hey, Dad.
So where did you actually train at?
I made a really good career out of being able to bump, sell, and I had a punch me face.
I wasn't about to call you dad, so.
Seriously?
I felt like it was in an anime or something.
People get really mad at those videos for some reason. Like, it triggers certain people, yeah.
Bloop. Wow.
I was actually lost as an infant, and I was taken in by a traveling group of independent wrestlers.
I love it. I'm excited for this stuff.
Bro.
Getting punched in the face on the daily.
Do you always do these interviews with your shirt off?
What?
Man, this guy won't shut up.
All right, everybody. So today I have with me a really special guest. I am very excited to have him on. I kind of reached out to him a few months ago and set this up. And I have Terrence Ward on with me. He is the PA announcer for the Memphis Hustle, which is a basketball team in Memphis area. He's also the MC for the Redbirds, and he's also a filmmaker, and he's an announcer for Memphis Wrestling. And I am so glad to have you on today, man. How are you doing?
I am great. It has been, as we were talking before the show, raising a 2-month-old is challenging, and some of your listeners, if they were watching this on video, would see I got a little bit of bloodshot eyes, and it's not because this is Coca-Cola only, but the exhaustion is real.
Yes, it definitely is. Congratulations, by the way, on being a new dad.
Yeah, it's definitely 5 years of praying and 4 years of trying, and finally, that third clinic visit was the perfect time. So
yeah. That's awesome, man. It's always it's a blessing. One of the things I always say is, I was placed on this earth to be a dad, and there's not a feeling that can replace it. So I'm so glad that you're getting to experience that now and everything as well.
No, I appreciate it.
So let's kind of jump right into everything. You do a lot of announcing. You have a voice for it, man. In fact, the first time that I saw anything that you had done was on your TikTok. And you were doing some of the ring announcing stuff that you do on there. And I loved it. That was, I was like, man, he has that voice that you want to listen to. So what was it that got you into doing announcing? Was it something that you always wanted to do?
Well, yes and no. So I can remember watching, WCW, which is what my late grandfather got me into, was WCW. But the first recollection I remember of doing any kind of ring announcing was imitating Howard Finkel.
Okay.
I don't remember if it was just Monday Night Raw. I don't remember, but I know I remember doing that. And then of course, once I heard JR's voice, it's like, hey, this guy sounds just like me. Somebody from the South with it. He sounds normal. Everybody else sounds weird. So it's like, I immediately connected with his voice and then the energy. Man, he made you believe everything. He made you believe everything that was going on inside of that ring or backstage. And that just was really kind of like, I want to be a part of that. So I was 16 years old, and a classmate of mine had passed away in a tragic car accident, her and her newborn. So her family was trying to recoup some, obviously some medical costs, some burial costs associated with that tragedy.
Right.
And one of our classmates, her uncle was a wrestling promoter, and went to the event. I was like, hey, what can I do? I'd love to volunteer. I would love to be able to do anything. What can I do? What can I do to help? And they gave me a camera and was like, here, this is what we want you to do. Point it towards the ring, follow the wrestlers. Have you watched wrestling before? Yes. If somebody's in the ring, keep it in the ring. So very simple instructions for this young ADHD kid. Very easy to follow. Can't screw that up. So, fast forward to the end of the show, the promoter comes up to me and says, hey, I really like what you're doing. Would you want to stick around? I've got a few more shows. I'd love to be able to call you if we need you. And so that relationship started there. And then a year later, I was like, I've got to do something different. 17. I want to, I'm tired of holding a camera, sitting behind it. I want to be in front of it in some way.
Right.
And I got my opportunity, and I froze. I froze. And it was I was doing commentary, PA commentary, which I hate these days, but again, it's just what it is. Right. Brian Byerly, he went by Brian Edwards, was his commentary name. Still friends with him today, and he carried that whole show pretty much by himself, and literally had to drag responses out of me because I was just so frozen. Didn't know what to do during the headlines. But luckily, he was very patient, very kind, helped me feel very warm and welcome at the desk. And so things kind of picked up from there. And just here we are, 16, 17 years later. And the experiences have just in the last 2 years been crazy.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, like I said at the beginning, you're doing all kinds of stuff. You're doing the MC for the Memphis Redbirds, which, like I told you at the beginning, I'm from that area. So I remember going to the very first ever Redbirds game at AutoZone Park when they played the St. Louis Cardinals. And Mark McGuire was still on the team at that time. So hearing, as soon as I saw that this was something you're doing, I kind of popped. I was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool that I'm going to get to talk to the guy who's the MC for the Memphis Redbirds.
Yeah, I appreciate that level of excitement, because it's always, I don't want to say awkward, but I tend to be, I have my public persona and I have my private persona, and it's they're very, very two different personalities. I can be very introverted at times and very reserved, and sometimes it comes off as, just I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to be around anybody, but it's just I try to remain humble as much as I can, because I've seen so much behind the scenes and in front of the camera of folks just crashing and burning with everything that comes along with any level of success, minor success or major success. And it's just a way of me helping keep myself in check, understanding and realizing that there's a lot more talented people than me out there that are doing a phenomenal job. But it's come back to bite me a few times down the road. But
well, from what I hear, you sound like you're doing an amazing job. You're also doing the Memphis Wrestling. Now, is that where you started? You started out in wrestling, like you told me. What was the company that you actually started with on announcing?
This is going to take it really far back. And for people in Northeast Arkansas, they're going to recognize this name. It's the All-Star Wrestling Federation.
Okay.
UF has some positive connotations there and some negative ones as well. But that's indie feds anywhere in the country. There's always some controversy going on.
Yep.
But this company gave me my start. The promoter, Aaron Polston, who passed away this year, gave me my break in the business. The second owner of the company, David Walls, who passed away a week later, which was totally a shock to everybody, that those two promoters literally that started it, continued it, and the third one, unfortunately, diagnosed with cancer. Just seems like a bad run here for the company.
Right.
Gave me my start. That's where I began my journey. And I was there from 2006 until 2009 or 10. I can't remember which year. So 3 or 4 years, give or take.
Okay. So yeah, you did it through high school a little bit then too.
Yeah.
So wow,
Yeah,
that's really impressive.
Yeah, definitely interesting when you're trying to explain to classmates that you're an announcer in a wrestling show. They're like, for WWE, you're in high school. No. There's a wrestling show oh.
So how did you get with Memphis Wrestling?
So gonna turn the dial back just a second because this was due to a relationship built, about a decade ago. I was talking to you before we started the show, and one of your previous guests, Ivan Warsaw, was Knuckles Madsen in NXT.
Right.
Him and I worked together at a company in West Memphis that was doing regional television. Downtown Bruno was one of the referees, later one of my broadcast colleagues. So him and I did commentary for that TV show, and met Dustin Starr, who is the promoter of Memphis Wrestling, the owner and promoter of Memphis Wrestling, Memphis Championship Wrestling LLC is the company name. But met Dustin. Dustin also was contracted by WWE, was in NXT for a year, signed on to be a wrestler, then later transitioned to be a referee, then got released from his contract after that full year. We all were kind of working together on this little project in West Memphis, and Dustin and I met for the first time. Could not stand the guy. Hated his guts. Like, just had this, he had literally walked like a rooster in the ring. It's bad. Like the walk and the head bob. It's just like, this guy is so full of himself. And of course, when he came to work at this company in West Memphis, it was after his WWE release.
Okay.
So this is like, is he full of himself because he thinks he worked for WWE? But then I realized his public persona is different than his private persona, his personality. So, in the locker room, getting to know him, really warmed up to him, got to know him even better down the road, working other events and visiting with him and his now wife, Maria, who was his girlfriend at the time. So in 2019, Dustin reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm starting a wrestling show, a company, Championship Wrestling from Memphis, which is what it was called at the time. Would love for you to do some voiceovers for me. I've always loved your voice. I've always wanted to use it if I ever could in a way. Because I'd then ring announcing at several events with him, not necessarily working for him, but alongside him on some cards. And so I said, sure. We come to an agreement, figured out a price on that, and the possibility if this became viable to do not a live show, but an actual produced, recorded, and created in Memphis type show, not just syndicated programming, then he would consider bringing me onto that promotion. And then fast forward a year later, the syndicated programming had proven that there was a market, there was an appetite for wrestling programming on television in Memphis, not just on social, but TV. Because Memphis is the wrestling capital of the world for a lot of folks. So, as you well know, and fast forward a year later, Dustin's like, "Hey, this is my date. I plan to launch the announcement for the kickoff of Championship Wrestling from Memphis." So we worked out an agreement, coming to work for him as a ring announcer, and it's been just an incredible journey to see where we were, episode 1, top of the line banquet hall in Memphis, to where, by the way, debut episode, Snowstorm. I think it was in February of 2020. We had you may remember this. You remember,
I do remember that. Yeah.
Memphis was covered in ice. People were calling out. It's like the worst timing in the world for this debut episode.
Right.
Dave Marquez, who's the owner, president of United Wrestling Network, and runs Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, which used to be an NWA affiliate back in the day. He worked for WWF, WWE, I guess you could say, as well as NWA and some other promotions for producing and hosting work. But he was there as well to help kind of facilitate the production and teach and train so that the next taping we could literally take off the floaties, if you will, and be able to succeed on our own.
Gotcha.
In terms of we're producing, editing, and creating this content in Memphis. Fast forward. We're now at the Wrestle Center on 3296 Winbrook Drive in Memphis, our own television studio. You walk in, you'll see a green screen painted wall. Everything is filmed and produced right there in Memphis at the Wrestle Center for content. And it's been crazy to think about over the last 4 years of this journey, how far we've come.
That's so cool. I love seeing that, starting from the ground up and working to what you guys have now. I've got to see some of the content that you guys have produced, and it's really well made, and it's very enjoyable. I can't wait to see more of it. So, I like that you're able to, you have your own space, so you can do it. And I just love that story. Now, kind of flipping over on this a little bit, there is another thing that I have on here for you that you do, and that is with when I first looked at it, I was like, oh, the Memphis Grizzlies. But is this a minor league team for the Memphis Grizzlies that you do the PA announcement for?
Yeah. So fun fact, with the Redbirds and the Hustle, Dustin and I both work together, and Dustin helped me get those 2 jobs because of the work that I've done with him for Memphis Wrestling. It's one of those, like, you scratch my back, help me out. Opportunities come along, I'm definitely going to help you out. So been a very beneficial friendship, but also business relationship as well. So the Memphis Hustle is the NBA affiliate, G League affiliated team in Memphis. The Grizzlies actually own this G League team. So it's not some of the G League teams that are in the NBA G League. It's all under NBA, leadership, etc. Are not always owned by their respective affiliates. So you take any of the Celtics or the Bulls or the Knicks or anybody like that, and those are just random examples. They might not own outright the G League affiliated team that might be owned by somebody else, but the Hustle is owned by the Grizzlies organization. So very beneficial for them that they can easily trade players, get exposure. I know last year or the year before, the NBA playoffs were in Memphis. It's a few we're in Memphis, and Dustin and I both. Dustin's the game day MC for the Grizzlies, with 2 other individuals, BLJ and can't remember her name, saved my life. And I feel bad about that. But we were on the short list for PA announcers. So if the PA announcers were not able to make it, we would have been called up to fill those slots for the playoffs, which would have been amazing. I would have been like head over heels.
Out of doing all of those, which one would you say is your the one that gave you the most nerves, I guess?
I would be lying if I told you that I didn't get butterflies anymore.
Yeah.
But I process that, like, once I walk through that gate, walk through that door, it is like business mindset.
Right.
And as long as I can keep myself occupied and not think about the nerves or think about, oh my God, there's a lot of people here, or there's, playoff, then I'm good. And I've, knock on wood, I had a very good success rate at that not happening in the last, 10 years or so.
Yeah.
Maybe less than that. But in terms of probably the biggest nerve point would maybe be a tie between the Hustle, which is broadcast on ESPN Plus, and then finding out that you were on ESPN Plus, not that you were on ESPN Plus.
You didn't know beforehand?
I didn't. No, I did not. Not until afterwards. I was doing, going through to see if I could find anything on social that I could reshare, or, I don't want to say steal, but stitch that somebody may have caught, or maybe it was a play or whatever. And I come across and I'm like, oh, we were on ESPN Plus. Oh, we were on ESPN Plus. So it made me very cautious about, if I make a mistake, I'm going to be a little bit more hard on myself to make sure I don't do that again.
Right.
And then commentary. It's so easy to get, for me, diagnosed ADHD, medicated for it, which, by the way, helps so much. It's if I get lost on a train of thought and you're doing commentary and you're in the middle of a match and you get lost, it's terrible. And I've done that recently, and I've went back and just cringed. But luckily I have a good dance partner. Dustin is able to jump right in there and rescue me if that happens. So are
you more play-by-play, or are you more color for commentary?
A little bit mixture of both. So Dustin, this is his baby. So he is definitely the number one seat. He's driving the program.
Yeah.
There's times that I may offer a little bit of snippets in there, but I try to make sure I try to make sure that I don't step on his toes in terms of commentary because he already knows, what's going to happen 3 months down the road in terms of promotion and matches, etc. I don't necessarily, thankfully, but it just kind of helps to follow his lead. But yeah, more of a color commentary, a little bit of play-by-play occasionally, just to add extra oomph into the commentary.
I got you. But I mean that with him leading the ship and stuff, you still get to have those little pops, with not knowing exactly what's going to, I'm sure you do know some of the outcomes and things, but you don't know how it's going to happen. So, you get to have that surprise with the people who are watching.
Oh yeah. And I've always, even when I worked at the show in West Memphis that we were doing TV for, my first TV experience there, I refused to look at to see who the winners were. I mean, we had our full match. I know you can see this, the folks at home can't, but this is not giving away any trade secrets, by the way, because this match is this episode's debuting this week. But you can see on this format sheet for those of you not watching, it's multicolored and there's different segments. There's different tells you segment 1. We've got a recap screen. We've got our open, and then we've got our match. But in the match column, there is no winner dictated on this sheet, and I refuse to get the other that has it there because I want to be able to respond, naturally and not say something that's like I expected that was going to happen.
Right, your reaction would feel hollow almost. Right,
it's the same as if somebody tells you before you watch the new Marvel movie or a new superhero movie, "Hey, this is what happens at the end of this is what happens." Why did you tell me?
Yeah,
I know it's a movie. I know that that this is a entertainment, but please don't tell me. I want to get away from everything. I want to be able to immerse myself in what I'm watching.
Right. Well, I mean, it kind of takes it when you take that away. I mean, it kind of ruins the moment. So yeah, no, I totally get that. And I mean, you'll still want to watch it, because it's still something that's you're entertained by, but it just kind of takes that moment away. So I saw something online that you were starting to do now, and it's a pro wrestling and social media seminar.
Yes.
So you're starting to, I guess, train the next generation when it comes to dealing with social media and working in a wrestling capacity as well. How did you get started in that?
So I actually work for a company. I don't want to mention that company's name.
Okay.
They are an amazing employer. They are, and I'm saying this in terms of this recording, they are an amazing employer. They have been so gracious to me, and I'm actually on 6 months paternity leave paid.
Oh,
which
wow.
is insane. I worked 8 years retail and was like, you're giving me what? I didn't actually birth this kid. I'm taking advantage of it for bonding time. But anyways, the company I work for recruited me from a retailer, the number one retailer in the world, for my social media abilities online. I was one of the top facilities in the nation out of 4,600 locations. I was number 4 for 10 consecutive weeks in terms of engagement, which is likes, comments, and shares.
Oh, wow.
Content. And then I was in the top 10, not top 10%, but the top 10 for 25 consecutive weeks up until I left to take the job that I have with this company who recruited me. So they brought me in to be a trainer to teach and train on social, to identify those trends, build campaigns, really help localize that experience on social media from that facility to their community, and not just them being a mouthpiece of corporate down to the facility level, but actually being true blue. This is my local facility, my local store. And they've done such a great job, and that client has been an amazing partner along that journey. So, I talked about for the last year, I don't see anything offered like that on social,
right?
Or pro wrestling or sports at all. It's just almost like a Wild West in terms of do whatever, man, and hope you go viral. Well, Eric Bischoff's book, Controversy Creates Cash, is great for television, but social media, not everybody realizes that stuff you say on social is a quote unquote work or not. So you can't always put everything that you would put on a TV program that they know is a entertainment piece on your social, where they don't always know that this is you as an entertainer, not you as an individual. So I identified quite a few gaps there, especially with some folks that I've worked alongside in sports entertainment and in pro wrestling. And I've had a few of them like twist my ear, like, hey, could you give me some advice? And I've given it willingly and freely. But it's like, we need something that these folks can get not just the basics, but a really good, deeper understanding of what you need to do on social to be successful. And a lot of the advice that I've given, Gabe Sapolsky, who many of your listeners may be familiar with, is a consultant with the WWE, did a seminar at Memphis Wrestling not too long ago. Got a lot of great feedback from Gabe on my ring announcing. He passed my information along. Still haven't got a call, Gabe. But anyway, but nonetheless, he's been an amazing mentor along the way, and listening to some of his Twitter spaces. But he's been a huge endorser of mine from a social media standpoint. In one of his spaces, really endorsed me for my knowledge in social, because he has a degree in marketing, so he understands the facets of social. So getting that was huge. And then I recently had, and I'm not going to name a name or a company, but I had a legendary referee reach out to me who was wanting some social media advice on establishing their presence. So they worked for a 3-letter company. I'll leave it there. To get the endorsement and to get that kind of, outreach from individuals who I looked up to and have admired their opinions and wanted to get their attention to see my content, it's huge. I love it.
Right.
But this seminar is the first of its kind that I know of to this degree that I've seen.
Well, man, it seems like you stay extremely busy, from doing all the things that I've already talked about to, I mean, you've even done some filmmaking and producing and things like that as well. How do you find the balance for all of this stuff? Because, I mean, it seems like, I know that sometimes basketball and baseball kind of overlap at times. So how are you staying sane, I guess is the right way to put it, with this?
So again, I attribute a lot of this to the ADHD. I'm not joking when I say this. I was diagnosed back in 2018. I knew I had it. I just had to do something. It was affecting work. It was affecting home life. I need to do something. But anyways, that's actually been, in this case, a blessing, because I can focus on those multiple things if they're spread out.
Right.
To a degree. So for baseball, I'm the low man on the totem pole for emceeing as far as getting dates. We have Rick Christian, who's been there the longest. Mm-hmm. There's another individual, I can't remember their name, Dustin, and myself. So there's 4 of us plus interns. So, obviously having this newborn, some of my dates this season are a little stretched thin, which I'm okay with, because then basketball season kicks off shortly. And then those dates are kind of a little bit spread out to where they're not overlapping like they normally would if you were doing both solo. Okay. The filmmaking, I started doing some of those documentary films on some veterans in my local area, won 4 film awards off of those films. And that's kind of taken the back burner. Not that it's not important to me, it is, but there's just, I'm delegating, not delegating. I am organizing myself to be a little bit more productive, to where I'm not just stressed out, because in episode 93 or 92 of Memphis Wrestling, I took over editing duties. So I edit the show from start to finish, with the exception of the commercials. So Dustin still handles the commercials. If a segment runs short because maybe their match went too quick or their promo was too short, he'll insert some extra footage. Gotcha. And you'll notice when Dustin does, and that's not a hit against Dustin, but you'll notice, because we have 2 different editing styles. Yeah. So when you see that, you'll see that there's been 2 hands in the cookie jar, which is not a bad thing. So definitely editing the TV show has sucked up a lot of my time that I normally would have been doing, like documentary work or other film or video editing. So this has been a fun experience in being able to produce this TV show. By the way, a little bit of tidbit of information for your folks who might be listening in that haven't seen or heard. Memphis Wrestling returns to Channel 5 September 1st. Memphis
cool.
Wrestling going home. Yeah, so this is the first time you're hearing about this, huh?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's amazing. How long ago has it been since they were actually on TV?
It has been, I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I believe it was 2002 or 2004.
So it's been a minute.
Yeah, it has been a hot minute, because I believe Memphis Wrestling's run under Corey Macklin was the last televised Channel 5 show. Mm-hmm. Power Pro before that, USWA before that, and then CWA, which Jerry Jarrett started before that.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, it, like you said, it has been a minute on that. There was something that you brought up a minute ago that I did want to talk about. I was on IMDb and I saw something called Arkansas Valor, and it's something that you've been a part of. And you kind of talked about it a minute ago, where you're bringing stories of local veterans. That kind of talk to us about that and tell us what that really is.
So my dad was a veteran, is a veteran, I should say, not was. He's still with us, fortunately. 15 years in the Army National Guard, and I'm very proud of his service. I have over 18 family members that have or are currently serving in the U.S. military in some form or fashion: Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines. I don't think we've got anybody in the Marines. We might have somewhere in extended family. I've got a second cousin who's currently a second lieutenant in the Army Reserve. So just a plethora of military service throughout our family. And I wanted to be able to get those stories. And I worked alongside the Wings of Honor Museum in Walnut Ridge, which is based at the old World War II Army Airfield, which is now the regional airport there for the city, which is where I live. And I've been on their board of directors since 2016. So we were trying to find ways to get that, just that audio visual video history of these veterans and their service. Colonel Anita Deason, she's retired now, was a part of Senator John Bozeman's office, military liaison for his office, hooked me up with the Veterans History Project, which is a sponsored, it's an evergreen or long-term, in layman's terms, program by the Library of Congress and the National Archives. So if you interview a veteran, as long as you're using a camera and you start to finish, don't edit anything, you can submit that veteran's story along with their information, and they will turn that into a digital archive of that veteran's service to the country.
Oh, wow.
So that preserves their story of service forever. So it got me to thinking, what are some stories that we didn't see or read in history books? And it's kind of the tagline for Arkansas Valor: stories you won't find in history books, not because they don't belong there, just because you don't know about these.
Right.
I started off with some World War II veterans who, sadly, all the ones I've interviewed have since passed away, but was able to get these videos. Their families have really latched on to these videos that these films that I've created, because it gives them insight into their dad or their mom's lives that they otherwise might not have told them. I'll give you an example. You'll be able to see this, but there's one up here, Private Raymond Clark. I interviewed him. He was, I think, my second or third veteran that I interviewed. And this was the first I actually turned into a film and submitted to film festivals. And Mr. Clark gave me a lot of information that, as we were interviewing his family, you could just see them like, what in the world? Like, we didn't even know this. He's never told us this before. And that's great, because the family now knows exactly what he did. For example, he was at D-Day during landings, June 4th, June 6th, 1944?
Yes.
But he was at the D-Day landings. He helped liberate some concentration camps along the way. He was also a survivor of the Malmedy Massacre, which was where, towards the end of the war, the German chancellor at the time, Hitler, had given the order: no prisoners, shoot everyone. Kill them all, don't take any prisoners. They rounded up a few Americans, and I think there was 80 or so that ended up losing their life, but there was a few that escaped. And through his testimony, he was one of those survivors of that massacre. Whether or not he survived a bullet wound, or if they were away enough that they could take off and tactically retreat from what was going on, that's what he did. But there was just so much information. It's like, how do we not know about this? Why do we not know about this? So that led to Arkansas Valor, and just really the drive to capture these stories and not only give our nation an opportunity to hear these stories firsthand, but the families as well. Because sometimes they're not comfortable talking to their family about the horrors that they saw, or the terrible things that they saw while in service, or, the relationships that they built while they were in the military. So.
Wow. That's really cool that you get to tell their stories, and that they are, like you said, it goes on now because people didn't know their stories, and you're able to tell that for them now. And I love stuff like that. Some of my favorite, I'm a history guy. I love going back through and reading stuff about history. So I'm definitely going to have to check these out. You're doing some wonderful things here, man. And I appreciate that somebody has taken the time to do something like this, because, not everybody's going to find this as interesting, but the fact that you're taking the time to tell these people's story and everything, I know it means a lot to the families, but it's important that we know those pieces of history.
Yeah, and I think my call to action would be to anybody, and I know this is such an opposite end of the spectrum of what we were talking about, but I love talking about it.
Yeah,
it is my call to action to anybody would be, if you have a person in your family that has served in the military in any capacity, I don't care if they were a cook the whole time they were in there, or if they were on the front lines firing a rifle down range at the enemy, their stories should be valued. Their experiences should be valued, because perspectives that give us a look into what these folks are doing to help keep the American machine running, because they might be a cook and never see frontline action, but who's feeding these thousands of Marines or these thousands of soldiers or airmen at these forward operating bases or at these deployment areas? The cooks are. I don't know what the MOS is called these days, or their actual role or position is called, but who's doing that? These folks are. And there comes with that logistical experience and dealing with the tight timelines and team building, that all these experiences have led to better enriched lives for them when they try to blend back into civilian life, if they choose to do so. So call to action for all of you listening: capture those stories, record them, even if it's 30 minutes, minimum of 30 minutes, I think is what they have to take it. If you have old letter correspondence, if you have a family member who was in Vietnam, maybe they wrote letters back home, you can submit those as well to the Library of Congress, and they will preserve those forever. Because if you're not interested, that's okay, but your kids or your nieces or nephews or your cousins, they may become interested in their family's history and want to start deep diving into that history and finding out what their family's done.
Yeah. I know. So my dad is, he's a veteran, and, he was in during the Cuban Missile Crisis and during the start of Vietnam and all that. But he lost all of the stuff that he had in a fire. So we've recently been able to get some of that stuff again, because we've been able to go to like Fort Benning, where he was stationed at, and everything, to find, like, there was medals that he had. And we're able to find records of those medals, and we were able to get a picture of all of his people in his platoon together and things like that. And just seeing his face light up whenever we're able to show him these things and get these things for him, it definitely means a lot to me, but I know it means a lot to him as well.
Yeah, and you can also, when you go to the Veterans History Project, I believe it's I can't remember the link for it, but they have a website through the Library of Congress's website. I think it's loc.gov/Veterans History Project, or VHP, something like that. But there's also a way that you can go in and apply for lost medals and certificates and files. So for my dad, for example, similar situation, just through time, he didn't know that he'd actually been awarded some additional medals during his time in service. So we applied to have his medals reissued to them, which had his name engraved on the back, as well as some of his medical information, documentation that he had. We applied for everything and anything we could get related to his service, which he was really happy to see those medals. Like your dad as well. It's like, I didn't even know I got this. But when you look at his paperwork, it's like, you signed for it. That was 30 years ago. I don't remember that.
So there was another thing that happened that was kind of cool, because my parents actually live in Missouri now, and my dad pastors a church up there. And whenever he moved to Missouri, there was actually a medal that came from the governor's office to him for being a veteran that lived in the state of Missouri. So, and he's very proud to show that to me and to whoever else, will take the time to look at that. So I thought that was really cool that, Missouri was able to do something like that, even though, like I said, he was in years ago, and they still do things like that for them. And it's very important.
That's awesome.
So you've done these documentaries, and I know that you've also been a part of another documentary you were a producer for it, and that's the Bobby Eaton documentary.
That was actually my very first documentary film that I created from the bottom up. That one was a lot of things surrounded that documentary that were positive, a lot of things that were negative. And I won't go into too much detail on the podcast, but I will say it is available for viewing for free online on my YouTube channel for T1 Media. And it is, again, I'm open to critiques, but please understand, watching this, I had $0 as a budget. I caught rides with Superstar Bill Dundee to get some of these videos. Some of these videos, like the JJ Dillon interview, the Dave Milliken interview, who's done WWE's championship belts in the past, and AEW's world heavyweight title. I believe he did that one as well. Those individuals were done in Tipton, Tennessee, and I actually drove Bobby to that event. A lot of those stories, a lot of the audio and a lot of the visuals are not the greatest as I look back, as I've gained the experience, but the story itself, I think, really just highlights how Bobby was as a person. And, you know, there were people who absolutely loved Bobby and did anything for him. And then there were those, unfortunately, that took advantage of him.
Right.
But I won't get into that part of the conversation. But anyways, we were set to release that in 2016, I believe it was. 2016, I believe, and 2016, and some things had come up between another individual and myself. So I decided at that moment, I contacted Bobby's sister, because that was the only way I could get a hold of Bobby, and was like, hey, this is what happened. I'm sorry, but we're not going to be able to move forward with this. And then fast forward a few years later, I was like, you know what? Screw it. People need to hear this. People need to see this. And I believe this was after Bobby passed away, or before he passed away. I can't remember for sure without looking it up. Published it, and it's my most viewed video on YouTube, which is just a testament of how many people loved Bobby. Stone Cold Steve Austin credits his career to Bobby Eaton.
Yes. Well, and, you know, one of the greatest tag teams that ever was credits him as being one of the greatest tag team wrestlers ever. And that's Bully Ray. Every time if you just say the name Bobby Eaton, he'll say greatest tag team wrestler ever.
He is definitely, I definitely have a shot across the bow that I want to give to WWE. And I'm not doing this to get egg on my face, but of every tag team, of every individual that's won in the Hall of Fame, I don't want to say this, I don't want to say it that way. I believe that Bobby Eaton, the Midnight Express, deserve their rightful place in those hallowed halls, because the recognition, there are so many performers individually.
Yeah. And
then there's this tag teams that would not be where they are today had it not been for the Midnight Express, had it not been for Bobby Eaton. Just the plethora of knowledge, the plethora of experience. You know, superstars across the board, across the world, have attributed him as being a night off, essentially. He was so easy to work with and made them look like $1 million. Right. He was the golden mid-carder who should have been the main eventer.
Yes.
In my opinion. And, you know, I mentioned Stone Cold Steve Austin a second ago. He won the television title. I believe it was the NWA television title, or maybe it was the WCW television title, from Bobby Eaton. That was his first championship title, mainstream title, that he won as a wrestler, stunning Steve Austin. Wow. And Bobby made him look like $1 million. And Bobby couldn't talk to save his life on a microphone. And that's not a shot at Bobby. That's just,
right.
He can tell you that. I mean, Jim Cornette would tell you that on
oh yeah,
Cornette's through would probably tell you that in a more colorful way. But Bobby could work. He didn't need to talk. His work spoke for itself. And he had an amazing manager, Jim Cornette, in his corner along the way that just really helped amplify him as a performer and him as an individual.
Yeah. You know, and that's another person is Jim Cornette, who I've always been one, you know, yes, he can get really hot and he can say some crazy things, but the man has a passion for wrestling and he has a mind for wrestling too.
Love the guy or hate him, you know, he is very, you are going to know Jim Cornette whether you want to or not. And I had the pleasure of meeting him when I interviewed him for Bobby Eaton's documentary, and he is the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah.
Just I've learned that if you don't want to know his opinion, then don't talk to him about certain topics.
Right.
My politics and my faith and my beliefs may be a little bit more to the right than Jim Cornette's.
Yeah.
So I've learned that those are conversations we're not going to have with Jim. And it's but he, and I don't mean that in a bad way. He is who he is. He's vocal in his opinion. He doesn't care whose toes he steps on. And I think that's how he's always been. And people love the honesty. And that's what I admire about Jim, is his brutal honesty.
Yeah.
You are not going to get anything sugar coated from him. If you suck, he's going to tell you suck.
Right. Yeah. So I've had another guy on here before, actually not too long ago, who told me, he's like, yeah, when you get Jim Cornette in the ring, that's one person. But Jim Cornette is a person, awesome guy. It was Brutal Bob Evans. He was on here, and that's one person I would love to meet is Jim Cornette, because I grew up like you watching the old WCW. My uncle is the one who got me into wrestling, and that's what we did, is we watched the old WCW before Nitro ever happened. That's what I even had the trading cards and stuff. I loved the old Steiner brothers, and those matches that you would see on there.
I think I'm digging here, and I hope I can find it. I don't know if I have them easily accessible, but I think I've actually got old school WWF trading cards still in the box, had never been opened until I got married. It was a wedding gift. And I'm like, you idiot, why did you open those? So I don't know where they are. I'll send you a picture on Instagram and let you see them if I can find them. We moved and I don't know where it's at.
Oh, that'd be great. I'd love to see that. So you talked about Jim Ross, and you were talking about Howard. And so, but who would you say are your biggest influences on the way that you do your announcing?
So I think we have to separate the two, because I do ring announcing as well as commentary for Memphis. And everybody does a Mount Rushmore, and I'm going to do one as well in terms of ring announcers. It's Howard Finkel, it's Justin Roberts, it's Tony Chimmel, and it's Dave Penzer. Those are four individuals that have had an influence on my style and how I approach ring announcing. And I would say if there was a fifth head on Mount Rushmore, I would even tie in a little bit of Lillian Garcia in terms of the personality that she brought as a ring announcer. She wasn't just a proper stood professional, the Fink version. You had Justin Roberts, who had a little bit more belt to his voice, and does still. And then you had Tony Chimmel, who was, had that twang, that certain volume that was just hit just right on certain ones when he didn't mess up an edge intro or two. And then you had Lillian, who brought in a whole new mix. You take a look at Samantha Irvin, Raw's ring announcer. She is amazing. She is, in my opinion, she is her own announcer. She has her own style. She's her own individual. But my God, there are traits of other announcers that I see that she's incorporated into her style. And I mean that in such a positive compliment, because it's what I've done. As far as commentators are concerned, Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler are who I grew up with. Tony Schiavone's number 3. And I've definitely got to add, and it's going to be a trade out between Bobby the Brain Heenan, and I got to add, even though he wasn't a commentator, he was on the screen all the time. That's Mean Gene Okerlund. Those were the guys that, when it come to holding a microphone or talking on the stick, those were the guys. That's who I tried to emulate a lot of, the personality and the character that I've become on television.
Right. Those are all great names, but one that you brought up that I was hoping you would say something about her. I knew she wouldn't be in your Mount Rushmore or anything, but Samantha Irvin, she puts it all behind. Like, do you watch the TikTok videos that she does of her doing the announcing?
Little fun fact: I had my TikTok a long time before Samantha Irvin. Thank you very much. And, I'm trying to get to that relationship level to where, I've noticed she's interacting a little bit more with me on social in terms of like when I reply to a story or I tag her in one of my videos. 178,000 followers on TikTok. And that's all because of a WWE contest I entered back in 2 years ago.
That's cool.
But when she got on TikTok, I'm like, it's over for me. There go all of my views. I will never have another viral introduction on TikTok ever again because she works for WWE. I mean, how much more exposure can you get? And this is not dogging her. This is just like, Still in my thunder. I was the voice of TikTok when it comes to ring announcing, and now you're here. No, it is. She is. God, her personality is just. It is so electric, and she is so fit. She is where she needs to be at this moment.
Yes,
and I've had folks in my TikTok comments said that I'm better than Samantha, or that Samantha's better than me, or I should be in her spot, or Mike Rome's spot. And it's like, I don't look at it that way. I love the compliment. Don't get me wrong. I love that, and we'll take it all the time.
Yeah.
But I respect everything that she does behind that microphone. And I've even started incorporating a little bit of what she does during my ring introductions since watching her on Raw and previously on SmackDown. She's just phenomenal. And in my opinion, she is the second greatest female ring announcer WWE has ever had, behind Lillian Garcia.
I can agree with that. Lillian was the one that I grew up with, so she's always going to be special to me. But man, I just love, like I said, she puts everything behind that whenever she's announcing, and you can see it. She uses her whole body to announce whenever she's saying those names. So yeah, no, I can totally get behind that.
Oh, even the Imperium's intro, whenever she starts doing a little bit of the actual pronunciations of their names in that native language.
Yeah.
I do Spanish introductions occasionally on TikTok, but like she's doing Italian and German and Austrian pronunciations. It's like, I like that. That's different. It stands out. That brings a little bit more flair to that intro, to where old schoolers are going to be like, she's doing too much. She's making herself the star. No, she's adding value to that performer and their entrance, making it ever much more special. And she's right where she needs to be.
Totally agree. So you've got all this going on. You're a dad. Do you have any hobbies?
No. I have zero. No, in all, I have no life. I have no time for anything else. My wife could tell you I don't have even time for her. No. She's probably laughing in the other room, or she's probably shaking her head going, yeah, no, he's right. No, in all seriousness, no, she's been very supportive, even before we were married and all of this. But hobbies, for me, it's TikTok. Like, TikTok has become my hobby. And I'd mentioned to you a second ago, back in 2021, WWE had an announcer contest. I had 5,000 followers on TikTok. They announced this. The winner would be able to ring announce a match at SummerSlam.
Oh.
So, of course, I'm in the middle of my work day. So my boss, if you're listening to this, please don't fire me for this. I just chalk it up as me being on lunch for that moment. So I saw these videos WWE was dropping. It was The Undertaker. It was Edge. It was Bianca Belair. And there was another one. I can't remember what the other one was. But anyways, there was like 4 or 5. And they were all dropping. And I was like, oh, I've got to do this. If I don't do this now, then I'm going to miss the boat on the virality of what's going on here. Because it brought it to my For You page, the algorithm, for a reason. And of course, their higher power did that as well. But he gets some of that credit, or all of that credit, really. Yeah. But I did that duet. And overnight, I woke up the next morning, I had 33,000 followers, up from 5,000 the night before. I was like, oh my God.
Oh, wow.
This could happen. I could win this thing.
Yeah.
Forward to a month before the contest ended, or a couple weeks before the contest ended, I had roughly 50,000 followers, and every single one of my videos, with the exception of one, were the top viewed videos of that contest. Nobody had more views than me.
Wow.
All the videos, with the exception of one. I think Baker Banter, who's another young man who's a big wrestling fan, has a condition and just phenomenal. Brought so much energy to his video, and I loved it. But I get a call or a message originally from WWE on TikTok. So they followed me, sent me a message. Hey, congratulations. We'd like to select you as one of our finalists in our contest. Oh my God, this is huge. I love this. Yes, here's my information. Set up a Zoom call, got interviewed on a Zoom call. Except we were I was on video. The interviewer wasn't, which was like, I don't like this. In terms of like an interview, not like this, but and thought everything went great and had some great communication back and forth. Found out I was in the finals. said, do not share this, but you've moved on to the finals. Please keep this close to your chest until we get closer to time. We'll announce our winners at this point in time, or this date and time. So here we are. I'm getting messages from verified users who are in this contest. Mr. Professor had reached out. There was another individual who reached out, who were all verified. Like, hey, have you heard anything? I haven't heard anything. And I wasn't in wrestling terms kayfabe, but I was being serious. I have not heard anything. The Saturday at 10:30 a.m., the day before the pay-per-view, I get an email that says, we've decided to move forward with somebody else. Thank you so much for participating in the contest. And I'm just like, I literally sat back in my chair and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. How? I had the most viewed video. How?
Yeah.
And of course, I was a little upset.
Yeah.
Find out the next day, Ringside Rain. She's an amazing, amazing lady. She's a ring announcer out in California who does MMA and pro wrestling announcing. So I came to terms with it a few weeks later. I was more hurt, not from her, but from not winning, obviously.
Right.
But just like looking back, it's like my TikTok account grew to what it was and got the exposure thanks in part to that contest. So I won a lot more in terms of exposure there than I probably would have from SummerSlam. And I don't want to, and I'm not saying that in a negative way, but from a social media standpoint, looking at some of the other entrants that participated, I had the most growth on social. Right. So I won huge. I may not have won the first place prize, but by golly, I came in second. I came in second.
Well, there's been multiple shows. Like you look at American Idol, some of the runner-ups are the ones who have actually made it, and I barely see anything from the ones who actually won it. So
Jennifer Hudson, prime example.
Exactly. So, nothing wrong with being the runner-up. And like I said, that's how I found you, was through TikTok and you doing the announcing videos. And so, if you hadn't have done that, we might not be sitting here right now having this conversation.
I will share one more quick story with you. I don't want to take up too much more of your time.
You're great,
but
man.
Another opportunity came through because of TikTok. Again, secondary came around because of TikTok. I'm not going to steal the man upstairs thunder, but right. So I get a message February of this year. I think it was February. Yeah, February of this year. And said, hey, my name is so-and-so. No, it wasn't DM. It was an email from an individual who was the social media director for the PFL, which is the second largest MMA company currently in the world.
Okay.
They have a market in Europe, the Professional Fighters League. They've got Jake Paul, who is signed to be one of their fighters, Logan Paul's brother. So you've got, which is going to be interesting because it's a UFC competitor. You've got the brothers on competing programs now since they've been acquired, same company. Yep. But anyways, I get this email. I'm like, this can't be legit. So I spent like 15, 20 minutes researching because I don't watch a lot of MMA, admittedly, and not because I don't find it interesting. I don't have the time. I barely watch wrestling. I don't have the time.
Yeah.
WWE, AEW, PFL, UFC. If you ever want to bring me in, I can watch it all the time. It'd be my job. So I reached back out. I'm like, sure, I'd love to, set up some time to talk. So we got on a phone call. Literally the same night I replied, he called me within about 10 minutes. We talked for 10 or 15 minutes. He said, let me get in contact with my executive VP. He's going to talk to you about the details of this and interview you to see if, we bring you down for an audition possibly. What? So, this thing had moved into like fourth gear pretty quick. I get on a phone call with the EVP of the PFL, who is over this particular department, who handles the cage announcers. And him and I talked for about 20 minutes and said he saw my TikTok videos. They had reached out because they saw what I was doing on TikTok, knew that I had some ring announcing experience, and wanted to know if I'd be interested in coming down to audition. Yes. Tell me more. Yeah. So, it was like surreal. I was kind of like, there's no way. And keep this in mind as the story progresses. The cage announcer for the PFL I was auditioning for was Lillian Garcia.
Oh, wow.
She was leaving at the time, that wasn't public, but she was leaving the PFL for her next endeavor. Uh-huh. So they're needing a replacement. Yeah. So it's like, okay.
That's big shoes to fill.
Exactly. We just talked about her being on my Mount Rushmore as an alternate. So It's like that is insane. So I get all the information, the booking information. They fly me out to Orlando to do the 8th week of PFL's Challenger Series. So Farouk, what is his name? He is the announcer for BattleBots. Had auditioned as well. He auditioned during week 7 for their fights for the Challenger Series, and then I did week 8 of the Challenger Series, which is the second round fights. Which, by the way, you can check out on. I believe it's Fubu on their official YouTube channel, and then PFL's social channels. You'll see legit. I was there. So, I fly out to Universal Studios. I'm backstage, don't know anybody. This is a new experience. First impressions. You're in the green room. I'm talking to Kenny Florian, Kayla Harrison, who's their former, women's champion there in PFL, but also 2-time Olympic gold medalist. And then you've got Randy Couture, former UFC World Heavyweight Champion that Brock Lesnar beat in the UFC. Again, not a dig at Couture, but guy's a legend in MMA.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of like trying not to act starstruck without being starstruck. So like I'm in a room of individuals, and Scott, God, I can't remember his name either, but that's okay. Sorry, Scott, if you're listening to this. But these folks who have competed in MMA at major levels, who have, just amazing achievements under their belt. And here I am, some young country, 30-year-old country guy from Northeast Arkansas. And I'm sitting in this green room with these individuals who have just a star-studded record. Why am I here? And go out there, do the weigh-ins, do the event itself for intros and winner announcements. And it was just, I slid right into my groove of ring announcing. Like, this is no different than ring announcing. You read the cards, you go when you're cued. It was so relaxing, especially after that first matchup, because it's like, this is no different than being at Memphis Wrestling. You're good.
Right.
And I was good the rest of the night. I made a few slip-ups during introductions.
Yeah.
Because the IFV going on in the background, I could hear stuff going on. So it was kind of a little bit distracting.
Yes.
But man, it was such an amazing experience. I got a lot of great positive feedback from, the production team, the social teams, as well as the hosts and the celebrity judges. Just so much positive feedback that really helped boost my confidence and know that I have, and this is not me self-boasting, but letting me know that I do have talent that's worth investing in. Fast forward, I get a call from, or get an email from the EVP of PFL and said, hey, we'll let you know on this date where we're at, because we've got to get this figured out, because our first fight is coming up literally the following month in April.
Oh wow.
So it's
okay, yeah.
They having to make a decision, because I think this decision, I think this Lillian departing kind of came either ahead of schedule, or I don't know how all that worked, but I think they were trying to get somebody in there before their fights started for the regular season. And I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. And then I get a message back that says, hey, we've decided to go forward with someone else. I was, dude, again, crushed. I was crushed because I had seen my contract, and I don't want to talk about, as far as the monetary compensation, all that, but I saw the contract. I'm like, dude, this is like, I even called Dustin. I'm like, Dustin, listen, I'm going to have to up my fee for Memphis Wrestling. So it's like, you may be paying a little bit more out of pocket. But no, I'll just aside. I didn't tell him how much I was making, would have been making, but I was crushed, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is a perfect opportunity. Right. Now, granted, our son being here, there's no way that I could have done that. So yeah. I think God opened the door for the opportunity to get that exposure, to meet those connections, meet those folks, which I'll always be grateful to the PFL and the individuals who helped make that happen, because they were, again, phenomenal. That's not me just BSing or, stroking their ego. This is me being genuine. Then I find out literally a few days later that the individual that they chose to go forward with, wait for it, Justin Roberts. Another one on my Mount Rushmore. So I came to terms with it fairly quickly, and it's like, dude, you got beat by Justin Roberts.
Yep.
How is that a bad thing?
It's almost bragging rights,
Yeah, Well, I mean, a little bit, but it's like, come on, Justin, you're on AEW. Give me a little bit of crumbs. That's all I want.
you got AEW. Just leave it to me.
Give me Collision. Give me something, No, in all seriousness, like watching Justin work is just, he's phenomenal. Like,
yes.
I'm jealous a little bit, but to know that I auditioned for a role that was taken by Justin Roberts versus somebody I've never heard of, I am totally at peace with, and I'm so happy because they have got an amazing brand, an amazing personality. It's really going to carry them through this season, and if they continue with Justin, carry them for many more. Now, that being said, PFL, I'm still open for opportunities. You've got my email and contact information. I'll gladly take a booking.
There you go, man. So we're coming up on a close here on this episode, and this has been so much fun. I just have like a few more questions for you, and then we're going to get you off of here. If you had one piece of advice that you wish somebody would have gave you before you got into this, what would it be?
Very early on, I confused loyalty in a full-time job with loyalty in independent wrestling.
Okay.
If somebody would have gave me the advice early on that it's okay to be loyal, it's another to be completely loyal. I'll give you a prime example. I missed out on some opportunities at early networking and experience because of a promoter that I had built a relationship with business-wise, that being green in the business, not understanding how pro wrestling worked at the time, not understanding that some promoters, and again, not calling this one specifically out, but there are shyster promoters out there who will, promise you the moon and give you, a pebble out of the driveway. So I would definitely, would have loved the advice to don't anchor yourself down in the independent scene unless it is going to help gain you exposure in a positive way or help gain you opportunities in a positive way. I would have left the company I worked with a whole lot sooner to work for a rival company that was drawing 500 folks a week, that was on local television, that was recording for local television, by the way, where ours at the time I had stayed with that company was drawing 12 to 15 people a week.
Oh, wow.
Because the booking was terrible. So it's like, why did I stay there? Why did I tell this person that I would never work for them because I'm loyal to this company? I would have smacked my younger self upside the head and been like, shut up. So, but I'm really good friends with the promoter who I told I never worked for him. He was actually one of my groomsmen at my wedding. So,
oh, cool. Funny how things change.
Exactly.
Yeah. So do you have anything coming up that maybe you want to talk about before I get you off here?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, Memphis Wrestling is returning home to WMC Channel 5. You can check out Memphis Wrestling on Channel 5 if you're in the Memphis market area, on 5.5 on cable and television providers. Check your local listings. We're also on Fight Plus as well as the WMC Action News Plus app. We're also on YouTube premiere every Saturday at high noon. So we've got some upcoming events that I'll personally be at. A few of these I'm going to have to miss due to home commitments. But Sunday, August 27th, you can find me at Memphis Wrestling. You can get tickets at memphiswrestling.tv. We'll have Enzo Amore, who's going to be our special guest for that set of TV tapings. We tape 3 tapings in one day to provide us 3 weeks worth of content. They got a lot of guests that are coming up August the 19th, Pontotoc, Mississippi, Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Just a lot of great opportunities to catch me in Memphis Wrestling. Then I'll be at Redbirds Baseball Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. The current week that we're actually talking in, so that would be the 15th, 16th, and 17th of August for now, and then I should be back in September for some dates for Redbirds Baseball. And then I'm gearing up for Hustle Basketball. I'm hoping they bring me on for season number 3 to help cheer on the Memphis Hustle and the AG League team.
Awesome, man. And if people want to follow you, how can they do that?
You can follow me on any social media platform using the social media handle at that's THETW Ward, WARD. So it's THETWWARD. You'll find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. I think I'm on Be Real. I'm on Threads. I try to gather all those usernames from everywhere, but I'm mainly on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
All right. And you do cameos now too, don't you?
Yes. Cameos are available. You can go to the links in my bio with those social handles. They'll take you to my seminar as well if you want to attend that seminar to strengthen your social game for professional wrestling or sports entertainment. But cameos start out at $30, and that is going to get you that customized intro for your family, your friends, for a birthday gift, or just for yourself. If you want to emulate your favorite superstar, the only thing I ask is, or just want to tell everybody, I don't do copyrighted music. So that's to protect me. So you can add that later, but I can't add that in any of my video content.
All right, man. Well, it has been a blast talking to you tonight. I've really enjoyed this. And maybe we can get you back on here again here in the future.
I appreciate it, Jared, and I can't wait to see you soon. Invitation's always open for Memphis Wrestling. Give me a shout. I'll hook you up with a ticket. We'll make it happen.
All right, awesome. Thanks, man.
All right, appreciate you.
Hey, listeners. I'm glad you're enjoying what you're listening to. I'm Billy from Zero to Hero Podcast. I'll always be joined by Jim, and me and him are the Folk and Skull Podcasting. Definitely, if you love what you're listening to, then come swing on by Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you find your podcast, we'll be there too.
Welcome to the Vinyl Word Podcast, where forgotten spoken word records are revisited with a comedic twist. Join me, Steve Beach,
and me, Brian Mayer, for a trip down memory lane, where records weren't only for music, but also education.
Learn to bowl, throw a dinner party, or hit a baseball, all while being tethered to a spinning record on a gigantic stereo.
It was well-intentioned, ineffective, and totally ridiculous. But what other options did they have? And let's be honest, Steve, we can describe the internet the same way.
Yeah. Listen to the Vinyl Word Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Pocket Cast, iHeartRadio.
Literally anywhere
Amazon,
they get their podcast
Podchaser,
is what
Stitcher,
we're doing.
Deezer.
All right, everybody. I hope that you enjoyed that episode with Terrence Ward. He was a lot of fun to talk to, and he had a lot of great stories, and I'm really looking forward to maybe getting him back on the show here again in the future. He was a great guest to have on. As you know, I have all kinds of great guests on this show, so make sure that you stay tuned for the guests that we will be having here in the future. So I believe that my next guest is going to be Tony Snow. He is a manager at Wrestling for a Cause, and I'm really excited to talk to him to kind of get his backstory on everything that he's done to get to the place where he's at now in wrestling. I think that's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be a great episode for you guys to hear. So I want to give a shout out to my podcast networks, the OIW Podcast Network, the Avenue Podcast Network, and the Zero to Hero Podcast Network. All three of them are great, and they have all kinds of great content that you can find at them. I will have a link to each of them in my show notes. Make sure that you go and check them out. I also have merch out. If you guys would like to get a t-shirt that says, "If you give a dad a podcast," or if you would like a sticker that says, "Hello, all my beautiful people," or if you'd like a coffee mug with my logo on it, I have those available pretty much everywhere. Look at my social media and you will find it on there. Or you can look it up with my wife's page. She is the one who actually makes all this stuff for me, and that is Cups and Teas by Stasha. If you need any type of custom stuff done, hit her up. I know she started doing stuff for me when it comes to my shirts that I need for Diamond State Wrestling. She creates quality stuff, and you guys will really like what she has. And her pricing is really reasonable. I'm not just saying that just because she's my wife or anything, but she does have reasonable prices and great quality products. She has testimonials all over. If you look at her Etsy page, I think she has a 5-star rating on there. If not, it's 4.9. So just go and use her for any of your custom needs, or if you want any of my merch, go and check her stuff out as well. I also want to give a shout out to D-Cure. He is the man who created my ending theme song for me. I really appreciate him doing that. And if you like what you hear, make sure that you go and check his stuff out. I will have a link to his stuff as well in the show notes. Also want to give a shout out to the original Geek comics. They gave me a full-length page in their Paladin comic book to advertise. They have some great stories that are coming out. They actually, as you've heard me talk the last few weeks, they've been doing a campaign to raise money for the new 8th Day comic book that they are coming out with, and they were able to reach that goal. So for those of you who did help them out, I really do appreciate that. And go and support these guys. They have such great content, and they come out with such amazing stories. I found out today that I should be getting my Paladin comic book, the first one, here really soon. So I'm really excited for that. And I'll be getting Volume 2 of Vengeance, which is the first one that I read by them. And so I'm really excited to get these in the mail from them. So if you guys want to follow me on social media, you've heard me talk about it on here. You can go to Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok or Threads and just look up If You Give a Dad a Podcast, and you can find me on any of those. You can also look me up on Google. Just type in If You Give a Dad a Podcast, and I should be the first 10 to 15 results that you find there as well. If you want to send me an email, you can do so by sending it to giveadadapodcast@gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you guys, and if you have anything that you want to tell me about the show, or if there's something you want me to talk about, just send me a line. Whether it's on social media or email, I look forward to it. And make sure that as you're listening to this, you go and like, share, and subscribe to this show. Wherever you're listening at, make sure that you're subscribed to it and hit that notification bell. That way you get notified every time there is a new episode of iGadap. Also, leave me a review or a rating and tell me how I'm doing. If you like this episode, make sure that you go out there and rate and review it and tell me. The more people that do that, the more likely I am to be visible to other people who are looking for a show like mine. And so just go out there, give me a 5-star review, 4-star review, whatever you feel that this show deserves. Go out and just give it a review and let me know. As you know, I'm doing stuff with Diamond State Wrestling. I've talked about it a little bit on here. I'm doing the Rare Cut. It is a pre-show for all of their content that comes out and all of their shows that are coming out. So make sure that you go and follow them on the Diamond State YouTube page. And I have social media for Diamond State as well, so make sure that you go out there and follow them as well. So I'm going to continue doing something that I've been doing the last few weeks, and I love it. It's a lot of fun, and I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it, and that is Dad Joke of the Week. How did the frog burn his tongue? He tried to eat a firefly. All right, everybody. I love you. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time. Bye.
I'm in my room grounded, but I got a podcast on. He calls us beautiful people, then tells us who we have on. The best part of my day, though we're blocked out in my pods. Tell my friends all about it so that they follow along. And the host is kinda nerdy, but guess what I am as well. I don't feel so alone, and I began walking out of my shell. Heard a story, I need a connection I haven't felt. I'll be looking for the next one, till then farewell. It's the podcast for me. Have it on, better go see. Listen closely, download and tune in remotely. It's the podcast for me. Have it on, better go see. And listen closely, download and tune in remotely.
This podcast is part of the OIW Podcasting Network.